and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be creating a fun Halloween box card. Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and recreate this cute box card for Halloween. I love crafting for Halloween. I'm not, it's funny, I actually don't like scary movies or things that are too spooky, but for some reason I very much enjoy crafting for Halloween. I did use a few different companies to create this box card. The box card is from Pretty Pink Posh. The skeletons and the sentiments are from Tailored Expressions. And then I have the bat, the fence, and the grass is from Lawn Fawn. So let's go ahead and get started. So off screen, I did die cut my actual box card. So this is the die that comes with it. You have the box card cut out, the inserts, and then some scalloped borders to kind of decorate the card. We're not going to use those. We're just going to use the insert and the actual box card. So I die cut 2 inserts, but I'm actually only going to be stenciling on one, since this is the front of the box card, and then this one will go on the inside, and I don't need to decorate it because we're going to actually adhere the grass over it so you won't even see it. So I am going to be using the Spooky Sky Stencil from Pretty Pink Posh, which I believe was last year's Halloween release. I'm also going to be stenciling on top of my waffle flower stencil mat. I really like this silicone mat. I know they have newer mats, grip mats, and I have not invested in one yet. Not to say that I don't want to, because eventually I will, but I still really enjoy my stencil mat. It is silicone based. It's stained, but that's okay. That just means it's well loved. It's going to do that. You know, reds tend to stain everything, and the stencil mat is white, so that's why it's stained. And I'm also crafting on top of my Tim Holtz glass mat. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and stencil on my clouds. You will notice that the stencil, I believe, is a 6 by 6 inch stencil, and my box card, when laid flat, is a little bit bigger than that. So I am going to have to shift my stencil a little bit to make sure that the clouds look aesthetically pleasing once the card is assembled. So I'm going to start over here on the left side, and I'm going to start with the colors. Let's see, I'm using my Distress Oxides today, and I think for my purples I'm going to go with Wilted Violet and let's see, Villainous Potion. And then I'm also going to be using Peacock Feathers. I guess it helps if I have them there in the right direction so you can read it. And Salvaged Patina. And then I'll also be using Picked Raspberry, Kitsch Flamingo, and then Black Soot. I think I also might, and I didn't do this on the other one, but I kind of want to add in some Uncharted Mariner around the edges. I think I'm going to do that. That may or may not work. We'll see. I didn't do that with the first card, but like, I don't know. I really love blue. It's one of my favorite colors, all things blue, whether that's teal, blue, sapphire, which is another blue, just a darker blue, royal blue, cobalt blue. Anyway, I think you guys get the hint. So let's start with, oh, that's the other thing. I have a new puppy, so there's dog hair everywhere, which is hilarious because he is a non-shedding dog. Oh, I take that back. I guess technically he sheds twice a year, and right now is one of those times, which also could be that he's shedding his puppy coat. He is 5 months old. And I forgot how much work it is. Well, technically I didn't forget, but I don't know. You just, when you get a puppy, you're like, why did I do this? And then they grow up, and then you're like, oh, let me do that puppy thing again. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but needless to say, he's a good boy. He's fun. He is a Queensland Heeler and Staffordshire Terrier mix. So he's super smart and super stubborn. Let's see, what do I want to start with? I think I want to start with, let's do Villainous Potion. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to stencil the bottom of the clouds in the Villainous Potion, and then the upper portion of the clouds in the Wilted Violet to kind of give it that little bit of a gradient effect. But I think because I tend to get a little messy when I'm ink blending, I'm going to just mask off some of these areas. Because I know myself, I'll try to be careful, but then I won't. So I'm just going to stencil on using a blending brush. Now I do have blending brushes for my oxides that are different from my dye inks. I don't want to contaminate them since oxides are a dye and pigment ink fusion. So I have dedicated brushes for them. And then I'm just going to use a paper towel to kind of just wipe off some of the areas when I'm done stenciling before I shift. Okay, let me see. Oh, that's cute. Okay. And then I also want to be careful too, because I don't want to get ink on the inside of my box card. So I'm just gonna, this is a Gina K Designs Tidy Towel. It's a little bit damp, so it's gonna help me kind of wipe up these areas, but it's not super damp to where I'm gonna get water everywhere. Whoops. I need a little container for it though. I don't really have a spot to put it. Okay, so there's the one stencil, or one cloud, excuse me. And then I'm gonna shift to the bigger cloud and I'll put him right here. Mask off this side. All right. I will say, after taking so much time off, I am definitely rusty. My first card, I did make quite a few mistakes. I was able to cover them up, but at the same time, I kind of learned from that, and I was like, well, maybe your break was a little too long because you are making mistakes that you shouldn't. Okay, so bringing in the Wilted Violet. I can't believe we are already in August. That is insane to me. This year is just flying by so fast. I don't know if that's just me or if anybody else is experiencing the same. Oops. Okay. All right. One more cloud on this side. All right. So again, we're just stenciling the Villainous Potion down at the bottom. And then we're using the Wilted Violet for the top part of the cloud. All right. Oh, that's cute. Wipe this off. Okay. All right, those little tidy towels come in handy. I know if like Lawn Fawn has one, Gina K Designs has one. I do like how Gina's new tidy towels are a little bit They're definitely thicker than her previous ones. I feel like I have better luck with these than I do her old ones. I used to tear her old ones a lot. Part of that was my mistake because I would not have enough water on them. And so I did notice when you don't have enough water on them and they're a little bit dry, that's kind of when the material starts to peel. So you definitely want to make sure you have enough water, but not too much to where it's saturating your project. Okay, ooh. Maybe I do. Do I want it? I don't know. Do I want it hanging over? Maybe a little bit. Yeah, okay. There is no right or wrong way to do this. It's just kind of whatever you would like your background to look like. This does take a little bit of time since I am using multiple colors. If you want to speed up the process, I would suggest maybe using one color. But I did want this to be a little bit colorful, less spooky, I suppose. I will say the inside of the card is probably a little bit more spooky since I really don't have that much color on the inside, but the outside kind of makes up for that. And I don't mind wiping off the stencil on top of the cloud since it's the same color. Although I did manage to get some right there. Whoops, that's okay. All right, oh, that's cute. Again, making sure my work surface is clean because I don't want to spread that color on the inside of my card. All right, so let's do, that might be too big. Maybe I'll do a smaller blue cloud right here. Let's see. Ink blending the bottom with the peacock feathers, and then using the Salvaged Patina for the upper portion of the card. Oop, don't want that to slide. Okay. All right, cute. All right. Okay. That looks cute. Make sure you don't wipe the stencil. I know I kind of did, but I was also very careful to. Oxides are water reactive. Again, Kitsch Flamingo and picked raspberry. Starting off with the picked raspberry since it is the darker color. Again, ink blending the bottom and then using the, oh, scared myself. Thought I grabbed the wrong color. Okay, and using the Kitsch Flamingo for the upper portion of the cloud. All right, wiping this off. Oops, I shifted that. I just want to be careful to wipe that off. I have so much stuff everywhere. Okay. Okay, and let's do a little one right here. Kind of mask off these areas. All right, let's see. How are we looking? Oh, that's super cute. Purple one right here. Okay. I think I was a little bit more meticulous this time when adding my clouds. On my first card, I don't have any purple at the top, but that's okay. Even when you create the exact same card, they still always come out a little different. They each have their own unique characteristics. How do I want that? Oh, I guess right there is fine. Okay. Bring back our Salvaged Patina and peacock feathers. Ooh, these little ones are harder to stencil. Okay. Yeah, perfect. So now to make it a little moody, which, oh my gosh, I told myself I wanted to do this before I stenciled on my clouds, but I got too excited with wanting to share this video with you guys that I totally forgot. But I wanted to actually ink blend the outside edges before I started the clouds. I thought that would actually look a little bit better because when I did it on my first card, it kind of covered up some of the coloring, on the clouds. But I mean, and then it muted them a little bit. But I guess since it is technically a Halloween card, it's not too terrible. So here's my Uncharted Mariner and my black soot. Okay, and so I'm just gonna take usually what's ever left over on my black soot just because it's such a dominant color. I really don't want to re-ink it. I'm just kind of, like I said, wanting to make it a little moody. So I'm just gonna go around the edges to darken it a little bit. But let's see. Sorry, I'm gonna clean this up. And then I wanna bring that blue in a little bit. I tap that off because I don't want it too dominant. And then just gonna kind of go around the outside edges again. It's very subtle. I don't even know if the camera's gonna pick it up, if you guys can even see the blue, but again, it is a little subtle. It's there. Kind of soften the black soot a little bit. All right. Okay, oh, you know what I did forget that we can't forget is, hold on, let me wipe this off. We need to make sure we stencil the front of our card, and we also need to add the bats. So where did here we go. And again, we only need to do one. That's gonna go on the inside. So let's see, let's do I'm gonna mask this area off right here on where the perforated line is to the left of that, because that is what we're gonna put double-sided tape to adhere it to the base of the box card. And I don't want to put ink there because I do notice that the any kind of, whether it's glue, double-sided tape, it's a little bit harder to adhere them together. They don't really want to stick very well, so I'm just gonna make sure I don't get any ink there. Look, I almost brought in the blue. It's just my go-to color. All right. Going in with the picked raspberry. And then we're gonna bring in the Kitsch Flamingo. All right. And then, a little loud. Sorry about that. All right. And then let's go with a little guy. Again, I'm masking that area off. And Villainous Potion. And Wilted Violet. Perfect. So now we need to add our bats. And so I actually contemplated this on how I wanted to add the bats. So obviously on my first card, I just stenciled them on, but then I'm like, oh, I kind of want to make them dimensional. So Distress has textured paste in black opaque, and I'm like, oh, that would be perfect for my bats. And it'll kind of give it dimension. But then, and so what I mean is just using the black opaque paste and have the bats kind of, it just gives them a little bit of dimension around the card. But I'm also gonna stencil the webs and the spider in the background. And then I was like, well, I kind of want the textured paste there. But in order to do that, I would have to wait for the bats to dry and then stencil or use the opaque textured paste for the spiders. And so I guess if I was patient enough, I probably could, but then again, we'd have to wait for it to dry. So I think instead of using the black opaque textured paste for the bats, I'm gonna stencil the bats on, but I'm gonna use the textured paste for the spiders. So here are my bats. The bats, that is the stencil A of the spooky style. I can't speak either apparently. The spooky sky stencil. It's a 3-piece stencil, layering stencil. So you have the clouds, the bats, and then some stars. I thought about adding some stars to this one as well, but then I'm like, that might just be too busy. I don't know. I don't want this video to be too long, but how do I want this? I like the 2 bats here. So let me get my miniature blending brush, and I gotta find my black soot. I have so many oxides on my desk right now, just stacked in piles. Okay. And then we're going to stencil this on. Because it's a dye and pigment ink, I want to make sure that the pigment portion, the darkest, or the pigment covers up the clouds. I do not want the clouds, the color of the clouds, to poke through my bats. So I'm going to go pretty heavy hand when I am stenciling on the bats. So I have those 2 there. Maybe I'll do this guy over here. Oh, how cute. I love it. Look at how cute that is. I think we're okay. Let's see, how do I want to do this? So again, our back panel, when it's laid out, is a lot bigger than our stencil. So I am gonna have to shift my stencil around a little bit. And that's okay, to make sure all my bats fit. Okay. Again, I want to make sure I have a lot of color down so that way the clouds don't peek through where the bats are overlapping. Oh, that's super cute. Okay, maybe I'm gonna have a bat come sideways here. That's cute. Oops, I need to make sure I don't get that. And we need a couple of, oh, how do I want to do that? Maybe a couple of bats. This is always the hardest for me, is the placement of my bats, where I think that it would look the best. Oops. Okay, and then maybe a little one right here. Using a small blending brush is super helpful too. I don't want the full bat because he's just flying off the corner. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Now let's see. I'm gonna do a bat over here. A bat right here. And I feel like we need, do I want to, I guess I could do a little one right here. Yay, all right. One maybe right here. Okay, I'm getting a little carried away. Can't help it though. Maybe just a wing. Yeah, okay, I better stop. Because if I don't, then our background's just gonna be nothing but bats. So, let's see. I'm just gonna take some rubbing alcohol that's diluted a little bit with water. I think it's 70% alcohol. And then, like I said, I dilute it a little bit with water so it's not so strong. Oop, like shredding my paper towel. That's okay. All right, so I will set that off to the side. And I'm gonna use the, again, I believe this was part of last year's release, still a Pretty Pink Posh stencil. This is a 2-piece stencil, so it's got the webs and then it's got the spiders. And this one is called Layered Spiders. And again, they're etched down at the bottom, stencil B, stencil A. Line this up. Let's see. Okay. And I am going to use I'm going to use my Picket Fence Studio Pouncers. This one I dedicate to just white pigment ink. And I will use, let's see, I like the Hero Arts Unicorn white pigment ink. Okay. And then I'm just gonna pounce. Ooh, that's gonna probably shake the camera, so I'm sorry. I'll try to go gentle so it doesn't shake you guys around. Again, I'm just pouncing that white pigment onto our cardstock. Oh, it looks good. Okay, perfect. I'll go down a little bit, even though you're not gonna see it, just because I can. Why not? I'm sorry if this is shaking you guys around. Let's see, how are we looking? Oh, it looks good. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Oh, I guess we need a web over here. I wonder how I can line that up. I guess like that. Looks perfect. All right, let me move this. So at this part of the video, I actually needed to delete the audio, and now I will do a voiceover. Said puppy had come home early from his beach walk, so pure chaos is all I can say. But anyway, so now we're going to go ahead and add the black opaque texture paste to the spiders. Anytime I open up a new jar of paste, textured paste, lunar paste, let's see, there's also glitter gel. Anytime I expose air to the product, I make sure to use my press and seal, and it helps with the longevity of the product. So that's kind of a neat trick if you guys ever tend to have pastes that dry out too quickly. Highly recommend you use press and seal once the jar has been open. And I'm using just a plastic palette knife to apply the paste to my background. And here's the part where I ran into a little bit of a snag. The spiders were a little too far spread out on the stencil. So when I went to apply more spiders, see how like the corner, if I were to lay down that spider to bring it closer to the others, would touch the already stenciled on spider. So I was filming and I'm like, okay, well, how do normally I would just let this sit and dry off to the side, but again, since I was filming, I'm like, I need to somehow speed up the drying process on these spiders. So to help me speed up the drying process, I'm going to go ahead and use my embossing heat tool, making sure, since the heat is direct when embossing, I need to make sure that it keep a far enough distance that I am not burning the textured paste or that it's not bubbling. And then I want to make sure that I'm constantly moving the heat tool. So again, I don't get any kind of bubbling, cracking, or any sort of, warping of the spider. It didn't take very long for the spiders to dry. I also used a thin layer of the textured paste. The thicker the layer, the longer it's going to take to dry. So that was super helpful when speeding up the drying time. And now I'm just going to go ahead and add a few more spiders to my background. You don't have to cover the entire background because most of it's going to get covered up. You just want to make sure that you add spiders where you're going to actually see the background. But again, you will have other images that'll be in the forefront that will take up most of that space. So just keep that in mind when adding whatever, and it doesn't have to be spiders, it's just whatever's going to be on your background. And I kind of struggled a little bit with this spider. I was scraping a little too hard. Again, being very careful to make sure the stencil does not touch the wet spider. I think I'm going to add a few more spiders to the background, and that'll be it. Again, I don't need to cover all of the background because you're not going to see it. Adding the spider was hard because of the angle, so just watching this, it looks a little awkward. Again, it would have been easier if I could have rotated the panel, but that spider that's next to it is still wet. And then I realized, okay, well, now I have textured paste over the perforated lines, and what I'm doing is I'm bending the sidewalls to make sure that when the textured paste dries, I'm still able to fold the card. If I were to have the spiders dry while the card was flat, then it would make it very hard to assemble the rest of the card. And I got textured paste absolutely everywhere. Such a messy crafter. Off screen, I did take the stencil and the palette knife to the sink to wash it off. You do not want your paste to dry on the stencil or the palette knife. If you don't have the ability to run to the sink right away, I would get a container, fill it up with warm soapy water, and just dump the stencil and the palette knife into that water and have it sit there until you are able to go to the sink and wash it off. Again, you just want to make sure that the paste doesn't dry on the palette knife or stencil. And I'm using my heat tool to heat set the spiders. Once the spiders have dried, we're going to go ahead and assemble the box card. I'm going to take the front panel and the insert or the inside panel, and I'm going to use my bone folder to really help score the tabs once I fold them on the perforated line. Normally I use liquid glue to adhere everything and anything, but for my box card, instead of waiting for the liquid adhesive to dry, I'm actually going to use double-sided adhesive tape, which is just as strong as liquid adhesive, but again, you don't have the drying time, so it made the assembly a lot quicker. I also use my bone folder to really press down on the double-sided tape. I get better results when I do that. If I skip that step, I tend to have issues with my double-sided tape for some reason. So if you're struggling with double-sided tape, that is just kind of a trick, is once you've put down the tape, use your bone folder to really press it into the cardstock. And definitely do this before you take the liner off. Otherwise, yeah, it'll just be a disaster. There are different ways to assemble your box card. I mean, the end result is going to be the same, but some crafters do it a little bit differently. I find it easier to just line up the two ends, so make sure the back panel of the box card is flat and line it up with the perforated line. And then I'll use my bone folder to really burnish the two pieces together. And for the center tab, I'm just going to kind of line it up in the middle between the front panel and that perforated back line, making sure that it's straight. Again, using the bone folder to really burnish that down. And then I'm actually going to fold the two inserts over, peel up my liner. Oh, I'm really making sure that that is down. I will pull up my liner from the double-sided tape, and then I will fold the other half of the arm to the perforated lines and burnish them down together. I also noticed when I adhered the other side wall of the box card, I noticed that I did not ink blend around the front of the card. So I am carefully going to take my blending brush and whatever ink is left over, I'm going to slide my fingers to try to help stabilize the box while I do some ink blending to kind of match the rest of the card. Okay, much better. Now everything matches and is more uniformed. I mean, I should have noticed that earlier, but that's okay. I'm glad I caught it now, and we were still able to fix it. So this is the spooky fence from Lawn Fawn. I did have an extra piece from a project. I always save my pieces from projects. It was a scrap piece, and it just so happened to almost fit perfectly. I only had to trim down a little bit. Using my Simon Says Stamp scissors, I really just eyeballed it and kind of just cut off the sides until it fit perfectly. I will be using my Gina Connect glue in a fine tip applicator bottle to adhere my spooky fence to my box card. And I'll use my reverse tweezers to hold the fence and the box card together while I wait for the glue to set. These reverse tweezers come in handy, so I definitely have a few in my craft room. I'm also going to cut down my grass because it is a little bit too long. And the trick that I'm going to use, because I don't want to cut off the blades of the grass, I'm actually going to slide the blades of the grass between the die. So the die is only going to cut the bottom portion and the two sides, and then I'll know that's going to perfectly align inside my box card. I will have to trim it a little bit because remember, this is the insert, so it's going to cut out the tabs on the side, and those tabs are what you would use to put your double-sided tape or liquid adhesive when building your box card. And so we don't need those two tabs, and that's when I'll use my scissors to just trim off the tabs, and then I'll use my liquid adhesive to glue the grass to the insert. Now it is time to work on our stamped images. I will be using my mini Misti and the new Stayin Alive Halloween stamp set from Tailored Expressions. I also purchased the coordinating dies as well. The stamps are a red rubber cling stamp, so I will need to remove the stamp pad in my Misti. I'm also going to heat emboss my images today, so I'll need to prep my cardstock with an anti-static powder tool. And what that does is it allows the embossing powder to only stick to your stamped images. Without the anti-static powder tool, the powder tends to kind of stick in areas that you don't want the powder to be. Now you can take a dry paintbrush to gently wipe the powder off, but it's always easier to just prep the cardstock first using an anti-static powder tool and a clear sticky ink to ink up your images. Many stamp companies have their version of embossing ink, but today I will be using my Versamark clear sticky ink. However, you can use whatever ink you may have in your stash. Also, many crafters will use their pigment inks if they don't have clear sticky ink, because pigment inks tend to stay wet longer. It allows the embossing powder to stick to the ink. I would not recommend using dye ink since they tend to dry almost instantly. Once my images have been covered with the white embossing powder, I'm going to go ahead and heat set them with my embossing tool. And the trick to not having your cardstock warp is to make sure that your heat tool is nice and hot before you go to emboss. I find that I get less warping when I preheat my tool. Tailor's dies are not pre-cut, so you will need wire snips to cut them apart. It is super easy. I will be using my Sidekick machine to cut out my images. Since the Sidekick does not come with a magnetic mat, I do use low-tack tape to make sure my die does not shift when running it through my die cut machine. I am definitely notorious for having my dies slip, and so I end up getting kind of an off-centered cut. If it's not too terrible, I'll still use it, but I've just found it easier to just tack it down with low-tack tape, and then that way I don't have to worry about it. I will be using the dies from Pretty Pink Posh Halloween Mug Editions die set to cut out the tombstone and the words RIP that will go perfectly with my scene. Again, you'll need wire snips since the dies will need to be cut apart, and I will be using my Connect adhesive from Gina Designs to glue the letters onto the tombstone. I would highly recommend using reverse tweezers if you have them, because that's going to help hold the letters since they are quite small. to mention that I used red glitter cardstock to cut out the words RIP, and I'm also going to use the same glittered cardstock to cut out the word boo. And that die is also from Pretty Pink Posh, and it is it is called Boo Script Die. Pretty much in all my videos, I'll always say that liquid glue is my favorite adhesive, especially Gina K Designs Connect liquid adhesive, and that still stands true. And the reason is I don't really have success with dot runners or tape runners. For some reason, I always find that my projects seem to fall apart over time. They just don't have the longevity as I find liquid glue to have. And I like that Gina's liquid adhesive, again, it doesn't take very long to dry. It does have enough time for wiggle room. Enough wiggle room to where it'll allow you to finalize exactly where you want your image or your sentiment to be. So that's kind of nice, and it doesn't take very long for that glue to dry, so I'm not waiting forever. I also find that using a fine tip applicator bottle works the best, especially for intricate cuts like the word boo. However, if you find that liquid glue is too messy for you, which sometimes it can be, but again, that's kind of where that fine tip applicator bottle comes into play, so that way you aren't making so much of a mess and you can control how much is actually coming out the fine tip portion of the bottle. But another option is to use double-sided adhesive sheets, which essentially just turns the word into a sticker. So that's another option. Since I've stenciled the bats flying in the spooky sky, I wanted to be able to tie in a bat to the front of my card, or at least the inside of my card. And I found a bat die from Lawn Fawn. It was part of their Scalloped Box Haunted House add-on die set, and I wanted the bat to look like it was flying. So the trick is to die cut 2 bats. I cut one out of black glitter cardstock and plain cardstock. And I'm also going to cut a strip of acetate, or in my case I actually use the stamp packaging, the packaging that my stamps come in, and I just recycled that, cut a strip out of it, and that's what I'll use to glue my bat to my project. And that'll complete today's card project. I hope you enjoyed this video. I cannot believe we're already close to the holiday season and that we are more than halfway through this year, which is crazy to me because I feel like we just started 2024. But anyway, time goes on, right? I would love it if you could please like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps. And to all my existing subscribers, thank you so much for your continued support. And until next time, bye.